How's it going, everybody? I'm meteorologist Jared Cognos back with the daily forecast. Today we have some more severe weather possible in the Central Plains. This time several major metro areas at risk for seeing some severe weather today. Yesterday we actually had a decent major metro area get hit, with Omaha having a 5-star map. I forgot to go ahead and put the recap in the show today until just a few minutes ago, until I remember that. So, but we did have a fairly strong storm roll through Omaha. We had I believe 3.5-inch report was the largest hail out of that. That happened just south of Omaha with that largest hail, but baseballs definitely rolled through a good chunk of downtown Omaha. A good chunk of populated areas getting hit. That road all the way down the Nebraska-Iowa border until moving through Omaha. So fairly decent storm out of that. See if that can get put in the show tomorrow, just so you guys can get an idea of what that map looks like. But for tomorrow, we're looking at a front range severe weather risk that extends out into the Central Plains just a little bit. Mainly a wind threat out of those storms, but we could see some hail, maybe a couple of brief tornadoes as well. We'll get into that. And then we have some Florida flooding to go over. They've had a massive amount of rain over the last 48 hours, bringing some major flooding to a good chunk of southern Florida. So we'll look at that here in a little bit, but for right now, we have this nice little cold front extending from Lake Superior, kind of all the way down into the Denver area. That's kind of where storms are going to be firing off for today. Right now, we do have some early morning convection that's still kind of lingering around southern Minnesota, moving into northern Iowa. After this dies down, we'll see some storms that pop up in the central and southern Iowa regions. That's where the main threat for the larger storms is going to be for today. But around the rest of the country, we're looking at some fairly warm temperatures moving up north here. You can see right where that boundary is, where that cold front is. We got mid-70s behind the cold front and mid and upper 80s out ahead of the cold front. So pretty good temperature contrast there. We have a decent little trough that's over the Great Lakes region, with that cold front extending down from there. So temperatures looking pretty good right now. Same with the dew points. Those are looking pretty decent right now as well. Those dew points are still expected to climb just a little bit into the mid and upper 60s for portions of southern Iowa and northern Missouri. Dew point already at 72 degrees down in Wichita. So things are there's still a lot of moisture out there right now for these storms to work with. And that shows kind of on our significant hail model here, showing how good those conditions are for some pretty substantial hail this right now for 5 p.m. this afternoon or this evening. You can see right where that boundary is, the cold front is. Storms expected to fire off, move into those conditions later on this evening. And then for tomorrow, you can see that front range risk all the way up into the Black Hills, and then extending out a little bit into the Central Plains of Nebraska and Kansas. For Saturday, we could see some severe storms pop up in the Central Plains, looking like a lower risk day, but we could still see some severe weather nonetheless. So for instability wise though, things are looking fairly good. Have a solid amount of energy for these storms to work with this afternoon. Right as they get going and move into this favorable environment, you see the sharp edge here. That's where those storms are expected to start firing off, reducing the instability behind the storms, but really just ingesting all of this warm, humid air out ahead of the storms, fueling them, and they could produce some fairly large hail, and at the very least, some damaging wind gusts coming out of them. So then for looking at tomorrow, you see this stream of instability extending all the way up into North Dakota, Montana area. Could see some severe storms up there and right along the Front Range, providing a substantial, or not substantial, but a decent amount of energy for those storms to work with. And then for Saturday, again, a decent amount of instability for the Central Plains for what seems to be more isolated storms for this weekend. And then Sunday, not expecting a whole lot for Sunday right now, but we'll see how things play out. We are still in the middle of storm season here, so not expecting any completely quiet days quite yet, but we could still see some severe storms for going into Sunday. So for the forecasted dew points here, you see all of these dark greens extending all the way up into really Wisconsin here, riding right along that cold front. Plenty of moisture for these storms to work with. I wouldn't be surprised if we see a few 70-plus degree dew points sneak into southern Iowa, northern Missouri, possibly even into Kansas City. So a lot of moisture for these storms to work with as they really start ramping up into the evening. So let's take a look at our high resolution model here. Right around 2 or 3 p.m., that morning convection really starting to die off right before some more storms pop up farther south, right along that cold front, around that 4 to 5 p.m. time frame. And then zooming in here a little bit, you see fairly messy in terms of the structure of these storms, but there's a lot of these individual cells all around here that could be producing severe hail moving into Quincy, Peoria, Davenport, all kind of possible to see some larger hail. And then going farther into the evening, Champaign, Chicago, possibly at risk. I expect the risk to be a slightly lower for Chicago. And then we could see Kansas City sneak in a few severe storms as well. But the main risk seems to be kind of right around the Iowa, Missouri, Illinois border intersection there. And then for the Kansas area for this afternoon, see some more isolated storms pop up. Not quite as widespread as it is slightly farther off to the northeast there, but we could still see some larger storms move on through, possibly through Hayes, Wichita. Those areas could see some severe storms going into this evening, looking like it'll be a decent, not super high-end day for Kansas though. So for our hail map for today, this is what we got for today. Got a very large risk area for up to $50 sized hail, extending all the way from the Front Range, Denver, right on the edge of that risk, all the way up into the upper peninsula of Michigan. So very wide area could see severe storms today, but the highest end severe storms looking like it's going to be right where this hatched area is, with Peoria being kind of the main large city that could be impacted. Kansas City also has a slightly lower chance to be impacted by some severe weather later on this evening. For wind, highest wind threat, pretty much the same area where those storms today are expected to be forming for that large hail threat. Expecting some storms could be producing possibly 80 to 90 mile an hour wind gusts, especially as they form into more of a line, and especially if they have any degree of rotation on them, they could produce some of those higher end wind gusts. So we could see, I wouldn't be surprised if we see an 80+ mile an hour wind gust out of some of these storms for today. And then tornado risk, slightly smaller area, Kansas City, Peoria, the main cities again at risk for tornadoes with those strongest storms. This looks to be where the conditions are the highest end for that tornado possibility, again with Peoria being the higher risk city. I expect it to be a slightly lower risk for tornadoes today than for hail and wind, but that potential is still there, especially if we get a more isolated storm that gets some rotation on it. For tomorrow's risk though, it's going to be even messier than we saw today or yesterday. And it's going to be stretching all the way up from north of the Black Hills, see some storms firing off later on in the evening, all the way down south to the the panhandles of Texas and Oklahoma. Seeing some storms starting to move through the overnight hours before likely becoming a subsevere as they move into eastern Nebraska and into the Omaha area and into Iowa. So that's what we got for tomorrow in the front range and Central Plains. But there is also a risk out for the northeastern U.S. here. More isolated severe thunderstorm possibilities out there, not going to be super widespread or anything, but a few of these more isolated cells, especially right along that front here, could be producing some severe hail all the way from Maine, probably down to northern West Virginia there. So that's what we're looking at for that before that front moves off the coast overnight, pretty much killing off that severe risk, maybe getting some strong winds behind the front. But we'll see how that goes. For our jet stream here, not a ton of upper level support as this system kind of moves off. And then for tomorrow, looking at again, or not tomorrow, Saturday, again, we do have this little tiny shortwave that could be enough to kick off some severe storms for the Central Plains. Not a whole lot to get a good severe weather day out of, but we could see a few severe storms out there for Saturday evening, and then we get this trough moving through. Severe risk likely for the Dakotas and Minnesota again later on early next week. And then we kind of get this ridging pattern setting up over the eastern U.S., bringing in those warm temperatures, a good amount of moisture from the Gulf of Mexico coming up into the Central Plains. And if we do get any little trough that moves through the Central Plains for next week and into the following week, that's likely going to kick off some severe weather. We do have plenty of moisture. Those temperatures are starting to rise quite a bit. So plenty of energy for these storms to work with. They just need a source of lift and some upper level support to really get things going. So last thing I kind of wanted to talk about today was the amount of rain that they've gotten down in southern Florida here. I have a couple of cities, smaller towns marked here. Fort Lauderdale got 7 inches of rain in the last 24 hours. Marco Island got 3 inches of rain. Just south of Marco Island got 8 inches. But the big story for the last 48 hours has been Hollywood, Florida, right in between Fort Lauderdale and Miami. They've gotten over 20 inches of rain in the last 48 hours. So just a massive amount of rain falling in a fairly short period of time. They have a tropical disturbance that's just been kind of sitting over the panhandle the peninsula for quite some time now, just streaming in all of that moisture. And they're expecting more rain in the next 72 hours or so. So looking right now at southern Florida, they're expecting another 3 to 5 inches of rain. This is on a low resolution model, so not picking up on a lot of those rain bands that we get forming, especially in those tropical systems. But the general consensus for the forecast for that, especially for that Hollywood area, is about another 3 to 6 inches of rain in the next 24 hours for them out there. So flooding expecting to continue for quite some time. Here Thursday, Friday, getting several more inches of rain for the southern tip of the Florida Peninsula there. And then finally on Saturday, things start to slow down for Florida. Rain possible and thunderstorms possible for the Midwest, Central Plains, and then again continuing for Sunday, those rain chances shifting slightly farther east towards the Great Lakes. And then for Monday, looking at some more possible storms, this time for the very far northern Midwest here, and right along the Gulf Coast, looking like we could see some more tropical type rain out there along the Gulf Coast as we inch closer to the beginning of hurricane season. Technically, it's already started. Things are fairly slow to start off for right now, but models are hinting at things starting to ramp up as we get towards the end of June and into July, that's when things look like they're really going to start picking up for hurricane season. So we'll definitely be keeping an eye out on that. So for beyond the 5-day period, the 6 to 10 day time frame, looking at above average chances for, or higher than average chances for above average precipitation for a good chunk of the northern U.S., southern edge of the country, and then of course Florida still expected to be wetter than average. So even after this tropical disturbance clears out of the way, they're still expecting several more rounds of rain, not expecting to dry up anytime soon, really give them any sort of a break out there for the time being. But for the East Coast, that's really the only area of the country that is expected to be drier than average. But in terms of temperature, the Northeast is really going to be heating up. They have the highest chance for above average temperatures out there, but really the entire eastern 2/3 of the country expected to be above average, with really only the small area in blue here expected to be slightly below average. So things are starting to heat up. That tropical precipitation is really starting to ramp up as well. Severe season seems like it's shifting north for the time being until we can get any sort of upper level support to move through the central U.S. But that's all we got for today. If you're interested in learning more about us, go ahead and follow us on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok. Or if you're interested in purchasing a plan, go ahead and scan that QR code up above me. Or you can give us a call at 855-334-4245, email us at info@hailtrace.com, or check out our website at www.hailtrace.com. That's it for now. I'm meteorologist Joey Cragness. Thanks for watching.